Not gonna lie, my TBR for September is mega. I'm definitely not gonna get through it all, but we are gonna give it a good try. We're gonna give it a good try. We'll see what happens. In September, I am of course participating in the Magical Readathon, which is my favourite readathon of all time. It is created by G over at Book Roast, and it's like an RPG D&D style readathon where you create a character that attends a magic school, completes lessons and gains qualifications. Very nerdy, very, very fun. I will of course put G's announcement video down below. It is a kind of intimidating readathon to join as well, and I know that G has made like an Aurelium Magical Readathon 101 kind of video that I will also put down below if you guys want to try and jump into this for the first time. But the qualification that I'm going for, the calling that I'm going for this year is Necromancer, and I always go for Necromancy as a stretch goal, but I've never achieved it until this year. I'm usually solidly in the camp of Demonologist, but I did real well in, was it April? And I managed to get Necromancer. So for September, I have to read 8 books for my Necromancer calling, which ain't a big deal, you know. Like I solidly read 10 books every month. The problem is that the 8 prompts that I need for the Necromancer calling do not at all mesh with any book that is on my TBR for September in terms of things that I already intended to read. So I don't know how this is gonna work. Because I have, like, normally we do my compulsory TBR and I just kind of tell you all of the books that I need to read, and then anything else that I read in the month is a bonus. We're doing something a little bit different this month because of the Magical Readathon. I'm going to tell you what my Magical Readathon at TBR is. It is subject to change. There are some prompts that I have a lot of choice for. There are other prompts that I only have a couple of books choice for, so the ones that I show you are probably going to be the ones that I read. But essentially I'm not going to go into any depth on any of the books that I'm rolling over from last month's TBR. I will just briefly mention them. We are mainly going to be focusing on my Magical Readathon TBR and any books that I think I'm going to get to in the month that you haven't necessarily heard about before in my recent TBRs. So we are actually going to be kicking off with my Patreon Inner Circle pick for the month of August. The reason why we're starting with this is because depending on what comes out of here, it could potentially influence my Magical Readathon TBR, as it may be a really good fit for one of those prompts where I currently have something that isn't necessarily a priority in for. The Inner Circle drawer is full of recommendations from my top tier on Patreon. Every month I pull one out and I aim to read it in the next month or 2 months that follow. I am currently, by the end of August, I think I'm going to be up to date on Patreon picks, so this should be the only one that I have to worry about in September, which is nice because I have other stuff that I need to worry about instead. But let us see what this one is going to be. So we'll go for this one, which is green, which means that it was added this year. Is it upside down? Oh, this has just been added. This is The Deer and the Dragon by Piper CJ, and this one is Katie's pick. This one does not look like it is going to fit, as far as I'm aware, for any of the more open prompts that I have for Magical Readathon, which is fine. It is also not available on Kindle Unlimited or Everand, so I'm gonna have to grab myself a copy, but this is one that I've seen that I am vaguely interested in because I think it has something to do with gods. So the synopsis says, the deities you call aren't always the ones who answer. Marlowe needs to believe she's crazy. The alternative would mean embracing the gift or curse shared by her mother, and she can see angels and demons, including a dark and haunting entity who's been with Marlowe her entire life. At least she believes that's all he is until a fae, I did not know this was fae, from the Nordic pantheon strolls into her life and informs her that she's been sharing a bed with the Prince of Hell, a prince who's now gone missing. Before she knows it, Marlowe is deeply entangled in a centuries-old war, stumbling straight into a battleground between mighty beings of myth and legend from powerful pantheons around the world, and who will come out on top may just depend on her and the love she never dared to believe in. So it's 448 pages, so not too bad. I've heard very mid things about Piper CJ, which is why I've been on the fence about this one, because the cover and the synopsis do sound very intriguing. Piper CJ is a fantasy romance author, and I haven't heard great things about their other series, so we'll see how I feel about this one. Definitely intrigued by the cover though, and I hope I enjoy this one because I would love to add it to my collection. But thank you very much to Casey for recommending this one for September. So moving on to my magical readathon TBR, the first of the 8 prompts that I need is for animal studies, and the topic is phoenix keeping, the prompt being a book with a phoenix on the cover or in the title. So for this one, I am going for a pre-order. This one is released in the middle of September, so I don't have my hands on a copy yet, but it is Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. This one is, I can't remember if it's a prequel. I think it's a prequel. It says sequel on the Goodreads synopsis. I haven't actually looked at the synopsis too much because it's a sequel to The House on the Cerulean Sea, which is a book that I've read and really enjoyed from TJ Klune. It was a 5-star read of whatever year that I read it in. That one is following a guy who essentially works for like a magical social services, and he does his job down to the letter. He is a stickler for the rules, but he also doesn't really have anything in his life apart from his job, and he ends up being sent by his management team to the House on the Cerulean Sea, which is a house that is full of the most dangerous magical creatures in the world, or the most dangerous magical children, should I say. And he starts to question his life up until this point and potentially live a little. So this sequel, I'm pretty sure, is following one of the main characters that he meets at the House in the Cerulean Sea, but I thought that it was following kind of his past. So maybe it's from his perspective and we're set in the future, but also dealing with his past. There is a phoenix on the cover. A phoenix is very relevant to this story, and it's not one that I planned on getting to immediately, but I'm happy for the excuse to actually get to one of my anticipated releases for this year, I guess. Moving on to spells and incantations, I need a cue, which means I need to complete 2 prompts. The first one is Charm Dancing Stars, a 5-star prediction. I could have gone with a bunch of books that there's a chance that I might give 5 stars to, but I have recently made a 5-star prediction video, and so I felt like I had to go with one of those, and particularly the most anticipated 5-star prediction for me, which is of course The Will of the Many by James Islington, which I now have a copy of thanks to Ash. Thank you so much, Ash, for sending this my way. This is a book that I had out from the library, so it's been on quite a few TBRs this year, and then I eventually had to return it because somebody had a hold on it, and kind of still wanted to get to it but haven't got to it because it's not a priority anymore. But anyway, The Will of the Many is a book that everybody has pretty much loved. Everyone who reads it says it's their best book of the year, and I'm trying not to go in with too high expectations, but it's real hard, isn't it? Because this has also been compared to my favorite series, which is Red Rising. So this one is in some sort of Roman inspired world, and it's following a guy who is infiltrating an academy to break it down from the inside. Very similar to Darrow's goal in Red Rising. I do believe it is different from that, but it does have that setup. That's all I really want to know going into it. I don't want to get into the details. I'm excited. I'm expecting this to be twisty and turny, and I really hope that I love this. The second prompt for spells and incantations is a spell, which is Memory Clip, and the prompt is to read a book that is shown in any of G's videos. Now, this is a little preemptive, but I do have it on good authority that Queen Bee by Juno Dawson is going to be in G's September TBR. I really wanted to read this one because it is an anticipated installment in one of my favorite series of the last couple of years. Also, it's really going to help me out on this TBR because it's only like 160 pages. So this one is the prequel to the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series, which is a series set in the UK. It's a contemporary fantasy following a group of witches who were in the same coven when they were children. However, a lot of time has passed, they've gone their separate ways, and one of them is the High Priestess of Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which is the governing body of witches in the United Kingdom. So this novella is a prequel to Her Majesty's Royal Coven, following the founder of the institution, which is Anne Boleyn. I'm assuming that this is focusing on the founding of Her Majesty's Royal Coven. I do not know for sure. I have not looked into it because I know I wanted to read it. Kind of sad it's so short because I really like this series, but I'm sure it'll be great regardless. And then comes Conjuration with my second very specific prompt, and the one that I struggled the most with. So I do need a D in Conjuration, which means I need to complete all 3 Conjuration classes. The first one for O is Conjure Bats, and the prompt is to read a book with a bat on the cover, and I'm telling y'all, we need more bats on the cover, because I found 3 in total in my entire collection, one of which I've read, and then I found 2 that have bats on the sprayed edges, but I'm a hella pedantic person, so for me they had to be on the cover. None of my options were great. They weren't highly anticipated books that I own that I want to read. So I've gone with The Book of Witches, which is an anthology. If you know anything about me, you will know I hate short stories. This was a book in a subscription box that realistically I should have skipped. It was the Halloween locked library book for last year, and I was so disappointed because they hyped this up so much, and I just do not care for short stories at all. But I'm always like a never say never kind of person. I always want to give everything a try. So I'm using this as an excuse to give this one a try. So the bats on here are very, very difficult to see, but there's one here and there's one here. Lots of birds on covers of books, but bats, really just not so much. It is a collection of short stories. It has a lot in it, actually, more than I'm happy with, because I am going away at the beginning of the month. I'm going to Rare in Edinburgh, so I was hoping that I'd be able to read 1 a day without having to take this with me, and I'm not sure if I can. There's 29, so I'm gonna have to read a couple in advance. The good thing about it is that it means that a lot of them are only like 20 pages. They're not gonna take me a lot of time. I just need more for something to really resonate with me, which is why I don't gravitate towards short stories. And with anthologies, like, you're always gonna get a handful that you like and a handful that you don't. Like, I don't feel like you're ever going to get an anthology where every story is like 4 or 5 stars, you know? So if anything, it'll give me an excuse to give this a try so that I can remove it from my collection and clear up some shelf space. All of these stories, as I'm sure you've assumed, I also assumed that they're all about witches. The next prompt for conjuration is Conjure Laurels, and the prompt is a book that won an award. Now, I struggled with this for a moment. I do have some award winners on my shelves, but I don't tend to gravitate towards books that have won literary awards. But then I realized that the Goodreads Choice Awards exist, so I have chosen a book that won the Goodreads Choice Award in 2016 for the fantasy category, which was The Book of Life by Deborah Harkness. So this one is the 3rd book in the Discovery of Witches series. It is following a witch called Diana who accidentally summons a manuscript that she doesn't know at the time, but it actually contains information that pertains to the creation of all of the magical creatures, and the witches, the demons, and the vampires would like to get this manuscript for themselves because the magic seems to be dwindling a little bit in the world, and the creatures are not as strong as they once were, and they think that if they have access to this manuscript, they will be able to restore strength to their particular species. One of the people who comes looking for this manuscript is Matthew, who is an ancient vampire who, against his better judgment, starts to fall for Diana and ends up having to protect her as all of the other witches, demons, and vampires start to kind of close circle around her to take this knowledge for themselves. Really loved book 1, didn't love book 2 as much, but based on the like setting and themes of book 2, I don't feel like that's a reflection on how I'm going to feel about book 3, and I still think that there's a chance I'm really going to enjoy this one. The final prompt for conjuration is Find Lost Map, which is a book with a map, and as you can imagine, that one's quite an open one for me. It applies to a lot of my collection. Weirdly, not a bunch of stuff on my immediate TBR though, so this one could change, but the only one that was on my immediate TBR really that I could add for this is The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden, which I currently have out from the library. Surprising that this had a map. I truly did not expect it, because this one is a World War I historical fantasy. We do have a map, which took me completely by surprise. So this one is World War II historical fantasy, as I mentioned, and we're following a nurse whose brother has died in the war, so she kind of moves on. And then we're also following her brother, who was woken up after, I think it's an explosion, trapped with a German soldier, and those two grow closer as they are trying to escape. Obviously, like, they're enemies, they're on different sides of this war, but to be able to survive, they have to work together. That is all I know about it. It's not my usual, but I do really like The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, and I really wanted to give this one a try. I also need an O in restoration, and the prompt for that one is Night Dew, which is to read a book with a night sky on the cover. I do not know if this is a stretch. I feel like it is a little bit, but we're rolling with it. I'm going to be reading Mother of Death and Dawn by Carissa Broadbent, which is the 3rd book in the War of Lost Heart series. and the final book for this round of my Patreon book club. So this one is an indie fantasy romance following a girl who frees herself from slavery, and she joins an order of magicians to petition them for help to go back to the place where she came from and also free her best friend from slavery that she had to leave behind. Along the way, she becomes the apprentice to a reclusive fire wielder called Max, and it is a slow burn kind of romance from there. Mother of Death and Dawn is a really big book that I have to read in September, so I'm happy that I could kind of finagle it into this TBR. The reason why it doesn't quite count is because it's not, like, the background is not necessarily indicative that there's a sky. The only thing that implies that there is a sky is like some light clouds behind our main character, but then also because of the title of this, I do think that this is technically a dawn sky. We're gonna count it, or maybe we'll swap it out at some point if we end up reading something else, who knows. And then the final class that I need for my magical readathon calling is an O in demonology, and the prompt for that is the unfamiliars, the prompt being person who does not read for fun picks a book for you. So we're gonna have Curtis come down and select a book. I'm not going to give him any pointers. I'm just going to let him roam around and we're going to see what he ends up with. Okay, your directions are to pick me a book.
Can you outline areas?
No, actually, because my books are all mixed in. So if you pick a book that I've read, I'll tell you I've read it. Paperback shelves. You have the stacks if you want to go in there. There's some on this cart. There's these shelves, but like I've read all of Robin Hobb and all of Sarah J Maas, but there are some at the bottom that I haven't read. There's also upstairs if you want to go up there.
Do I go upstairs?
Do whatever you want. There's the spare bedroom and the shelves at the top of the stairs. I'm not telling you anything about what's where because I don't want that to influence you. I want you to pick a book based on, well, when you picked it, you can tell us why.
I wish I knew something.
About anything?
Yeah.
Well, that's the qualification was that you're not a reader. You are a reader. You've read some things, but you're not like a regular reader, I guess.
You're never gonna read any of the Murakamis unless I tell you to, are you?
Yeah, there's a good chance. I mean, eventually, but not as a priority.
Which ones have you read?
Just Wind Up Bird. Yeah.
I have read this one.
Norwegian Wood.
Yeah, maybe this. Yeah.
Is that the one?
Because you're never gonna read otherwise.
And that is actually a recommendation because you have indeed read it.
Yes, a little bit of informed.
Did not think I was going to be reading translated literary fiction this month, but here we go. So Curtis's pick is indeed Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. This is a reference to a Beatles song. That is why it is titled Norwegian Wood. I think it is about a man and his girlfriend plays into it. His first love is the girlfriend of his best friend. Ooh. And it says immediately he's transported back almost 20 years to his student days in Tokyo, adrift in a world of uneasy friendships, casual sex, passion, loss, and desire. So from what I know of Murakami, from what I've previously read, which is just the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, Murakami's work is quite meandering. There's no like kind of linear plot structure with a clear beginning and end. The story kind of just goes where it goes, so I'm not really sure what I'm expecting from this. There is a lot of almost sexism and misogyny within Murakami's writing, which I mean, I take it with a pinch of salt because I'm aware that it's there, but just in case you guys were not and were looking to read Murakami, it is very obvious that it is written by a man. Curtis is absolutely right. I have an interest in Murakami, specifically 1Q84. I enjoyed the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, but I'm never going to pick up Murakami unless something pushes me into it. So Norwegian Wood is now added to my TBR and back to the rest of the stuff that you haven't seen yet. So that's it for my magical readathon TBR. Please do let me know actually throughout this video if any of the books that I mentioned you think have a particularly good audiobook, because I'm about to finish the Themis Files by Sylvain Nouvelle. If I have not finished the final book by the end of August, I will finish it very, very early in September. And the next book that I'm about to add to this TBR is what I think I'm going to be picking up next on audio. But obviously it would be more helpful to me if something that is already on my TBR is something I can listen to. The reason why I'm asking for recommendations specifically is because I am quite picky about audio. I'm very sensitive to sound in general. So it has to be something where you think the audiobook is better or just as good as reading the book physically. Subpar audiobook narrations I cannot do. Unless it's a thriller, then I can kind of roll with it. But if it's fantasy or something, like, we do not have a shot. So now that I've finished the Themis Files, or I'm about to finish them, I am about to start a new series, unless you give me any better suggestions, that I have heard is really, really good in audio, which is The Diviners by Caliber Bray. This is a series that I've wanted to read since I started BookTube in 2017, but the publishers never made like a matching set. I was waiting for the final book to be published, hoping for like a paperback box set that never really arrived. So when Fairy Loot did their special edition set, I did snap it up. It is a YA fantasy series. It is set in the 1920s and it surrounds like psychics and mediums, I think. I really love those kinds of stories. I find them so atmospheric. So I think going into autumn, I'm gonna have a great time with this series. And my plan is to kind of just beast through them on audio as and when I'm listening to audiobooks over the coming season. I am going to Rare at the beginning of the month, so I have been very neglectful of the Rare TBR that I made when I made it, and for that reason I think I'm gonna try and blast through a bunch of KU ebooks to see if I need to order any paperbacks throughout the end of August and the beginning of September. So I don't have anything solidly to put on this TBR right now because I have not decided what it is I'm gonna go with. I know Melissa K. Rorick is gonna be at Rare, so I would really love to try and get to Lady of Darkness. I think LJ Andrews is also gonna be there. I need to revisit the list and make myself a last minute TBR and see if I can knuckle down and get through some stuff. So just know that throughout the beginning of the month, I'm gonna be doing that because I will also read some sort of book by an author at Rare while I'm traveling to and from Edinburgh for that as well. And then I just have these, which I would like to briefly mention, which are the books that I did not get to. To be fair, this was not on my July TBR, but it is a book that I had out from the library in June. So it was on my June TBR and then I had to return it because somebody had a hold on it and it is now back. I have still not started Wave Kings Part 2, and I have this arc that is released on the 12th of September, which is Gloss by Sam K. Horton, which I think would be really good for the season. I think it's going to be very atmospheric. I just don't know how I'm going to fit it in. So we're also adding these to my September TBR. So this is my September TBR, minus whatever it is that Curtis has picked for me, plus more than one ebook and a pre-order that hasn't arrived yet. Do you see why I don't think we're getting through this? I'm gonna try my best, and Rare is the last trip, like the last anything I have planned until the end of October, and I am so ready to not go anywhere ever again. Like, I have been to too many places too close together and I don't want to go I don't want to move. I don't want to get out of bed. So my hope is that when I am back from Edinburgh, I am gonna knuckle down and get some reading done, get some crafting done. So do let me know about those audiobooks. I do hope that you guys are also participating in the magical readathon. The readathon, I've been participating in this readathon for 6 years now and I love it so much. So do, if you are unfamiliar, please go and check it out. Check out G's announcement video. And if you are a little bit overwhelmed by the magical readathon, because it is a lot, then do check out that 101 video so you can figure out how to best get involved. And down in my comments, let me know, aside from the audiobooks, if you are participating in magical readathon, what your calling is going to be. And if you guys would like to let me know that you were here but you don't feel like you have anything to say, then leave me an eye emoji for the diviners. But that is it from me today, guys. So please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you will find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Patreon if you'd like to join me on any of those. But that is it from me today, guys. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're go when nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.